In the year 500 AD, on the outskirts of the Byzantine Empire, a little girl was born. Her name was Theodora. Theodora grew up in a very poor family, and when her father passed away, Theodora had to support her family financially. She was responsible for it. And you know, desperate times makes you do desperate things, don't they? So in her desperation, she chose to become an actress. And as you can imagine, acting was a career that carried many negative associations. Even during that time, Theodora was a stage dancer. She performed as an acrobat dancer. She was a very ambitious girl. She always sought for new opportunities, new openings. She wanted to go higher in her career. So in quest for that, at the age of 16, she traveled to Egypt. There, Theodora was introduced to Christianity. She met the Lord in her heart. She took a decision to become a Christian and change her sinful career. But exactly around that time, Theodora also met somebody called Justinian I. He was the heir to the Roman Empire. So the soon-to-be emperor fell in love with Theodora and he marries her after 5 years. Now this poor peasant girl is the Empress of Rome. And the remarkable thing is, Emperor Justinian always treated Theodora as his intellectual and political equal, which was pretty rare in those days, and he even faced criticism for that. And because of Justinian's cooperation, Theodora reformed much of the Byzantine Empire, especially the capital city of the empire. She was particularly interested in fighting for the persecuted church, for the persecuted Christians, and because she was a stage dancer at one point in her life, she exactly knew the abuse that women went through in that industry. So she decided to close all the brothels. She established safe houses for women. She encouraged charity. She banned forced prostitution, and she expanded many women's rights, and she really fought for women. Theodora and Justinian also reconstructed Hagia Sophia, which is the largest church of that era. And even after Theodora passed away, Emperor Justinian continued the reforms that were close to Theodora's heart. He wanted to continue her legacy. Today, Theodora is considered one of the most influential Roman empresses throughout history. From being a poor, low-class girl to the Empress of Rome, her life was completely transformed. And not only that, she used her position to transform many lives. Now, why am I telling you this story? Well, number one, it's a really good rags to riches story. But the real reason I'm telling you is every woman has 3 seasons or 3 stages in her life. And in today's video, I want to talk to you about another poor peasant girl from the Bible who grows up in the lowest social class, and she steps in as the super world power, the queen of the biggest empire in those days. Her name is Esther. Esther's life shows 3 stages or 3 seasons, and although we may not wear a crown and sit on a real throne, we do go through these 3 stages or 3 seasons in our lives too. And what we do in one season will determine what happens in the next. The 3 seasons are the season of seclusion. The second is the season of celebration. The third is the season of the signet ring. Let's go to Esther chapter 2, verse 7. He, who is Mordecai, was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother. Now the young lady was beautiful of form and face, and when her father and her mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. Esther was an orphan girl ready to be released to her place of relevance. But her childhood was not easy. You know, losing both parents at a young age is the most devastating thing that can happen to any child. You know, God had a plan for Esther's life, but she had to go through wilderness experiences before she was released to her place of relevance, before she was situated in that place of honor, in her place of significance. God promised Israelites a land flowing with milk and honey, but they did have to go through some wilderness experiences. They did have to go through the dry, hot desert conditions before they could take possession of the promised land. And their attitude along the way, their actions, their reactions, their thinking along the way, it determined if they got to their destiny or not. Take Joseph, for example. Joseph had to go through pit and prison before he became the prime minister of Egypt. Take David. David was in the throes of death many times because of Saul before he sat on the throne. Daniel was taken captive before he got to the seat of significance in Babylonian palace. There are many examples. We can see multiple instances throughout the Bible where people had to go through disasters, heartbreaks, disappointments, difficult times before they stepped into the blessing that God had prepared for them. You know, when the enemy sees that you have an anointing on your life, that you are set apart for a purpose, it marks you as a special target for its attacks. And that's what happened to Esther. She was set apart for a purpose, for a time, but she also had to endure loneliness, abandonment, and being orphaned as a child. Now, if you are wondering why you had such a difficult childhood, or why you had to go through a very difficult experience, why you are going through wilderness experiences now, I want to remind you, God has His ways in the driest deserts, in the deepest oceans, in the lowest pits, in the darkest prisons, in the loneliest and strangest places. So don't despise your childhood or your season that you're in. The first season that Esther had to go through is a season of seclusion. You know, seclusion means isolation, quiet. It includes loneliness. Now, if you think growing up as an orphan in a foreign land, a land of captivity, was not enough, she was just taken into the custody of the king. Let's continue reading Esther chapter 2, reading from verses 8. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Hegai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Hegai, who had the charge of the harem. She pleased him and won his favor. Immediately he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. He assigned to her 7 female attendants selected from the king's palace and moved her and her attendants into the best place in the harem. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. You know, Esther was brought to the king's fortress because the king removed the previous queen from her position because she acted disrespectfully towards him. So Esther is brought along with many other young girls so the king can actually select whoever pleases his heart. You know, Esther was in a season of seclusion and scrutiny. Do you feel like you are going through a season of seclusion, of maybe scrutiny, of loneliness, of isolation? Are you away from the comfort and the familiarity that you once knew? Remember that this season really is needed in your journey, and what you do in this season will determine if you will be promoted to the next level or enter into the next level or not. You know, there are 3 things that Esther needed to do in this season. She needed to remain hidden. That's the first thing. You know, this part of the harem where she was at, she needed to be in privacy. It's not for you to come out and be known, to be public, to seek for attention. You know, God prepares His people in private so they can have victories in public. But if you don't prepare enough in private, you will have to face a rebuke in public. You know, many people want to come out and be known even before their time of preparation is done. Many people want big outward positions, big public ministries before they have put in enough time preparing in prayer, preparing in private. What happens when a baby is born prematurely? It's not easy for the baby to thrive, is it? You know, in this season of seclusion, Esther needed to prepare in private. It's not for her to come out, be public and be known. The second thing that Esther needed to do was she had to endure criticism and correction. You know, every woman who was brought to the citadel, to the king's palace, had to go through 12 months of beauty treatments. I'm sure it also included some kind of diet. There were beauty experts critiquing what needs to be corrected in Esther. She had to stand before them. She had to just be in their examination day after day, examination of these experts so they can tell what needs to be perfected in her. All beauty treatments are not relaxing. Some could be really painful. She had to endure pulling of hair. Just imagine threading. You probably can identify. And I don't want to go into other details, but beauty treatments can be painful. She had to endure other people looking at her, examining her, critiquing her, changing her diet maybe. Of course, Esther was a beautiful girl, but she needed to be perfected. There comes a season in our life too that God allows correction and criticism and disapprovals maybe, painful experiences. All these actually help us develop character. They help us be humble and develop some thick skin, which is very needed for a Christian. As we go through the process of refinement, we need to go through these. Our attitude during this time will result in receiving favor from the Lord. Haggai was a person who was in charge of the harem, and Esther pleased him and won his favor. So he provided her with special beauty treatments, special food. He also gave her 7 female attendants, specially selected from the king's palace, and he moved all of them to the best place in the harem. When God has favor on you, He will do for you in one day what we cannot do for ourselves throughout our lifetime. Let me repeat that again. When God has favor on you, when you have the favor of God on you, He will do for you in one day what you cannot do for yourself throughout your life. And the last thing Esther needed to do in seclusion, in this season of seclusion, is she needed to be quiet. She was instructed by Mordecai to remain silent about her Jewish identity. Some of us talk too much. And when we talk too much, we give away information that is supposed to be kept as a secret. How many times have we talked to the point where we begin chatting about information that we are not meant to share? The Bible says in Proverbs 10 verse 19, when there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise. When God impresses on your heart to keep something private, to be quiet about it, we need to heed His prompting. He sees the end from the beginning. God has information that we don't know yet. He wants to keep certain things private. As God's children, we are forbidden to actually engage in certain conversations, and we are instructed to be prudent in our talk. And because Esther went through this season of seclusion in preparing in private, cooperating during correction, and speaking within limits, she was able to enter into another glorious season. I'll tell you, if you are in a season of seclusion, you can follow what Esther did, and I'm sure it will help you propel into the next season of your life. There are 2 more seasons in Esther's life that I will share in the consecutive videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was a blessing for you. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I make videos every single week on intentionally pursuing a victorious life. Thank you again. I'll see you next week.